Chapter 7. The Russian Village in Niigata. To use the word radical to describe technocracy and transhumanism would be a gross understatement. They are both outside the bounds of objective reality, and worse, they are dragging the rest of us along with them. Patrick Wood, technocracy.news, December 15th, 2022. For several weeks now, Kaido wrestled with an unsettling feeling. Ever since he met with the mother of Himari in Sapporo Prefect, what was the name of that village? Bambitsu, Mambito, Mombetsu? It was written down somewhere. He could feel eyes on him. Even so, on the trip back, when he looked around, he was the only one on the road in the rental car. The feeling persisted on the train from the rental agency and all the way to his humble flat in Ehime Prefecture. But when he looked, he didn't see any candidates that fit any sort of surveillance profile. Half the time, there was literally no one else near him. Kaido wasn't the type to use pushpins on a corkboard as a means of organizing a given investigation. His method involved taking an item and really ruminating on it, sticking it in his mental craw and letting it digest. He wouldn't call it meditation. More, he'd secure it in his brain like a gem in the vise of a workshop, and he'd look at it from every angle, reposition it, look at it again, take out the gem, toss it up and down, feel its weight, sniff it, lick it, listen to it, put it back, and forget about it a day or two until something jogged his memory. This time the clue was the picture of the bearded man with the balalaika, Himari's father. That picture was truly lodged in his mind. He knew that man. During a period in his pseudo-meditative investigation cycle when Kaido decided to let the clue go and wait for something to give his thinking a new perspective, he found himself at a sushi spot a block down from his apartment. After the meal, he picked up his phone to check email, but then wondered in the haze of several beers if he had his keys. He did. Oh, good. He looked back at the phone. The screen doubled. It shrank and duplicated as though his device's desktop display were one monitor of many in a sequence. Then the phone was normal, as though nothing happened. It was almost like someone or something was primed to watch his use of the phone remotely, but when he picked it up and put it down, that offset whatever surveillance AI was in use. Smartphones try to be intuitive to their operating system, or OS. It can be initiated by movement. If you were trying to keep tabs on somebody, that sort of movement-enabled built-in programming would certainly impact surveillance software. Kaido observed a digital hiccup as such software clashed with his phone's OS. He blinked, then felt a surge, an instinctual surge, and caught himself before he did anything that would indicate he was savvy. He looked away from the phone at the clock on the wall and squinted first. He knew phone cameras could sick AI algorithms on a person based on their facial movements. Blame marketing software. Facial features are behavior indicators, which foretell a susceptible window for an ad pitch. Certainly the government hijacked and honed such tech, perfecting it over decades from the time it was conceived around the birth of the smartphone. So his facial responses, these alone could give him away. What was he going to do? Check his email. Look normal. Keep doing what he would have done anyway. That's what he was going to do. Kaido scrolled through his account as casually as he could. Junk mail. He deleted it. Put his phone in his pocket, signed the receipt of the hole-in-the-wall sushi joint, and walked away. That tingling was there again. It was his phone. How could he have missed it? Wasn't it obvious that they would be watching him through his phone? Of course. Everybody was watching everybody these days, and anything anybody anywhere did was secured on a hard drive amidst a server array the size of a college campus somewhere. But no government agency could simultaneously put dedicated eyes on millions of people at once. That's what AI algorithms and the like were for. They identified patterns so that the surveillance state of the developed world could zero in on supposed threats. They were watching him through his phone. Because of course they were. But who were they? And why were his activities of any concern? Was he the only ex-investigator who decided to follow up on an unsolved mystery persons case during retirement? Did the government keep tabs on every ex-investigator in Japan? Surely they didn't. That just wasn't feasible. It had to mean, at least in Kaito's case, that there was a lot more here than met the eye. He was walking several blocks when he realized he was nowhere near where he intended to go, and didn't even remember where he intended to go. He was lost in the rhythm of his thoughts and Ehime Prefecture, both of which were constant. Maybe he was chasing a rabbit down a hole coated in malted liquor. Here he was roaming listlessly in the middle of the afternoon. Well, it was dark, wasn't it? He started in the middle of the afternoon. How many beers were in him anyway? Car keys. Kaito drove. Now he'd have to walk back to the car and figure out, wait a minute, wait a second, wait. He took out the key ring. They were apartment keys. He didn't own a car. His head was muddled, and he wondered if his idea about the smartphone monitoring were just, it was a paranoid lark of the booze. He went home and slept it off, but the suspicion didn't leave him alone in dreams. Kaito awoke, sat up in bed, exhaled, and thought, well, I haven't done or said anything that would indicate I'm onto them. He didn't do anything of the kind last night. He just made a few drunken missteps, which are to be expected of inebriation. If they were watching him on a smartphone, they couldn't know he was nurturing a suspicion. They couldn't read his mind. And whoever was watching him would be doing so for reasons related to that which he was investigating. Long ago, Kaito learned to identify and trust his instincts. That feeling across the back of his neck meant something. It had to. But how could he get them to give themselves away? A phone as a tracking device is superior to precise tailing by a man on foot or in a car. And an agency in the government, or a hacker for the mob, one capable of breaking into a phone to use it as a tracking device in real time, such a person wouldn't have trouble doing the same with other technology in the vicinity of someone they needed to keep an eye on. They could track him with the phone and get visuals through endless surveillance cameras or even others' mobile devices. So he needed to travel somewhere for some reason that was plausible and in character where only the phone was operating, limiting their tracking capability to any other nearby phones and whatever satellites were in the sky. Satellites. He'd need to avoid satellites. He had to go somewhere indoors with absolutely no surveillance save his phone and nobody else. Then he had to leave the phone, get away, and not be seen leaving. And he'd have to set up his own surveillance solution in advance to see who he was dealing with. But it couldn't be anything with web connectivity or any sort of Bluetooth or wireless ability. He'd need a camera that was 15 years old or otherwise rudimentary. Thinking about it, he figured he could find one. There was a night vision device he once used for narcotics raids. It was somewhere. He could find the old thing. It was all a matter of positioning. And he'd have to retrieve the camera on the sly as well. Now, where could he do this? Developed Japan was not exactly known for its Luddites. It was considered by many countries to be ahead of even the United States in terms of technological futurism. You couldn't escape the Internet of Things. Such IoT infrastructure was in light bulbs, for goodness sake. Would he even be able to do this in Japan? Kaito spent a shower and breakfast thinking it over. Then it hit him. Niigata Russian village. With the trains, it might be a weekend trip. The bearded young man in the picture Yami Fujimoto gave him looked Slavic, to say the least, with those whiskers and the strange triangular guitar Slavic folk use. It was called something, a balalaika, Kaito remembered. Exploring the abandoned amusement park known as Niigata Russian Village would be in character for him as regarded his investigation. And if they were willing to follow him so far, that was even another indicator. A voice of doubt tried to make an argument, but Kaito quashed it with the strength of his hunch before it could transcend the subconscious. Sure, maybe the trip was going to cost him a little bit, but he could absorb a lot more. Without making any reservations or conducting any research online, Kaito got on a train with an intention to head up to Niigata. He watched everyone on the maglev with him carefully and discreetly as he ostensibly read manga acquired for the purpose. The trip was long enough he actually did read a little. The story in the manga had to do with cyborgs and manic pixie dream girls. Oh, it was by Hotaru Suzuki. Well, at least the kid was doing all right and appeared to have distanced himself from the hentai game. Kaido folded the graphic novel and sighed, looking out the window at just the right time. He thought he saw a pale man leaving the car out the corner of his eye. One he noticed somewhere before, maybe while he was on the ride back from Sapporo? Somewhere in his mind he caused... Somewhere in his mind he cursed the booze fog, doubtless impeding his memory. It took a lot for Kaido to restrain himself from tailing the man, but he had to. There it was, the tingling at the back of his neck. He had them off balance. They didn't know where he was going or why, so they were slipping, incidentally getting noticed. Sure, they had him in a surveillance net, but he wasn't acting in any way the algorithms could predict. In Niigata, Kaido rented a car, left the phone in the car, and found a shop run by an elderly couple who only took cash. No IoT here. And with the local passerby, it was loud all around. Their stand would do. His pursuers would have to tail him to know what he was up to. They couldn't eavesdrop technologically. Kaido asked the elderly couple about the failed theme park that was the Russian village. It was just several structures. They might even have torn them down by now, the old woman said dubiously, and finished wrapping salmon for Kaido. Thanks. And he went back to the car, driving around the community until nightfall, preparing himself a fresh meal, then making the trek up the hill to the failed amusement park. Niigata Russian village was nestled against mountains on a rise, relatively isolated and closed to unauthorized persons. Kaido parked a quarter-mile away and hopped a fence. Yes, this would do nicely. There was a great cathedral with Slavic-style multicolored cupolas like miniature towers at the corners, an old mini-golf course on the premises, and all sorts of abandoned attractions defunct of working technology. He expected there would be surveillance at the gates of the park and around exterior premises, but there wasn't anything to steal inside. By the volume of YouTube videos he encountered half drunk over the years, he expected whoever owned the property didn't care. The land was a liability with a spooky backstory, and its only value was in being demolished and rebuilt or sold for agriculture. Plus, it was remote, even for locals up the hill as it was. Kaido was gambling, sure, but he was actually a pretty good gambler. He'd made it to a high roller table in Vegas after all, hadn't he? I did, didn't I? He muttered. What a winning streak it must have been. The thought gave him flashes of those weeks, but a headache. Wait, he never went to Vegas before. Did he? Suddenly there was this clear memory. A poker table, crowded. Suspicious characters all around. Kaido blinked and shook his head, changing the trajectory of his thoughts and concentrating on the task at hand. He forced a service door on the back end of the largest building and made his way to an open area where he hid an old low-definition hand camera made around 2009. It could go 2 days with the right power pack, and he had one. Its night vision settings weren't the greatest, but would do. Kaido angled the camera in the mouth of a faux woolly mammoth, a glorified vestige of prehistory central to the abandoned cathedral of Niigata Russian village. The hulking ancient pachyderm had definitely seen better days. Chunks of furry PVC had fallen away, showing its hollow interior. He put his phone in the field of view of the camera by a bench on the ground, as though it fell from his pocket. He looked around to assure he was alone, donned his disguise, a hipster hat of the bowler variety, a band t-shirt, and an unremarkable gray surgical mask, then left out the back. It was 3 a.m. Early in the day, he also asked the old woman at the fish market about any all-night diners or coffee shops. Now the plan was to lay low the better part of a week, then trek out again in the night to retrieve his phone and camera. He'd be on foot from here until he went back for his car and the camera. Kaido finished Hotaru's manga in the booth of a 24-hour sushi place the old woman at the fish stand alluded to, one likewise free of any technology, being established in the 60s and never upgraded. As to the restaurant's culinary ability, Kaido was neither impressed nor disgusted. As day broke, he went to see an early matinee at a nearby theater, then checked into the oldest hotel he could find. Once or twice he thought he saw the pale silhouette of his stalker, but couldn't be sure. Whoever this was could definitely be described as a master of stealth. When he finally went to discover if his trail cam for spies caught anything, he was disappointed to find his phone undisturbed on the ground by the bench near the mammoth as it had been. Before he picked it up, he shined a light around the room and backed toward the mammoth carefully. He grabbed the camera, then pocketed the smartphone in a pouch disguised to shield its signal. Kaido found his car and went back to the hotel, electing to review the footage with the shower running and the curtains drawn in the bathroom, while standing in a closet he confirmed contained no bugs. He didn't have to go through much footage. 20 minutes after he set up the camera and left, a shadow came into frame, and then a little Japanese man in a droopy fishing hat became visible. He took off the hat and scratched his head, which was completely bald. His clothes weren't discernible in the green of the night camera. However, it did appear as though this man wore black sunglasses, even in the abandoned dark of the dead amusement park. The pale man walked up to the phone with his hands in his pockets, looked at it, chuckled, spit on the dusty floor, then chuckled some more. He put a finger to his ear and said something. Kaido rewound the footage and plugged in headphones. The guy had a raspy, weird voice. It sounded like the accent of a fool. But the words were not foolish. The man said, "Nothing here. Looks like he dropped his phone." And then he waited. After a moment more, he nodded, then picked up the smartphone bait Kaido left, looked at it, looked around the empty room, laughed again, and made an unsettling noise that was uncannily inhuman. There was definitely something wrong with this man. He always seemed to be grinning. He didn't look like somebody from the mob, and he didn't look like a cop. He had to be some sort of spook, but there was nothing Kaido could see which would indicate where he came from, who he was affiliated with, or anything like that. One thing was sure. This man knew his craft. The pale man did something to the phone Kaido left, put it back down, and made his exit. Kaido's reaction to this wasn't one of fear, it was one of excitement, as though he just scored a goal or checkmated an opponent. "Always trust your gut," he chuckled, then quickly put a hand over his mouth before he remembered the running shower would make enough white noise to obscure any tech listening in on his room. Now he needed to flush his stalkers into the open again. What he devised was to leave a voice message. Kaido kept several burner phones for emergencies. He favored one that was 20 years old and stout enough it would withstand a nuclear apocalypse. There wasn't tech in the thing that could be maneuvered by today's hackers, and it had no name attached to it, just a number, so even if they could get in, they would have to find it first. So he called himself from the smartphone he knew was being watched and left a message, expecting any calls he made to be intercepted, recorded, dissected, and acted on. Here's what he said. "Blue Fury. I know who he is, Blue Fury. I know where he is, and I know how to get him. Write down this address. Meet me here in precisely 1 week, 11 p.m. local time. I've got a thumb drive for you. You have a pen ready? Okay. Here we go," and he recited the address of a park he knew with 1 entry, 1 exit, and a gazebo. A week later, he left his phone under the gazebo, hid himself behind a Japanese maple at the park's only entrance and exit, then waited. He'd ordered meal delivery to the location from an internet cafe. The delivery man would show up with noodles, not find Kaido, who made the order, then walk around confused trying to figure out where his client was before getting back in his car and giving up. The delivery guy was late and livid nobody was in the gazebo after he waited around 10 minutes. He actually kicked the tree Kaido was hiding behind on his way out, coughing a number of expletives popular in China, Russia, and the Koreas before getting into a minicar and puttering on. Kaido waited seconds, then saw a gray sedan without headlights purr past down the street behind the delivery guy. They had taken the bait. They thought the delivery guy was Blue Fury. And now they were sure that delivery guy had a flash drive from Kaido. Bingo. Kaido recently secured a little car like the delivery guys. He picked it up for around a month's wages, if he were still on the force, that is. It worked well enough for a pre-owned car. It was vintage enough to have no tech that could be overridden and tracked by default. In other words, it was an old beater. Kaido kept his distance from the gray sedan, lights off. The delivery guy led them all on a winding trek through what felt like the totality of the Hime prefecture before the pale ones jumped him. He went off to smoke a joint, very illegal in Japan, behind a dumpster near a convenience store in a rougher neighborhood. Kaido kept his distance, having parked up the block under a Japanese oak shadow. The kid lit up and didn't see it coming. One of the pale ones started walking toward him from the far side of the dumpster. When the kid glanced over his shoulder, the other two sprang around from the front and threw a hood on him that must have been dosed in anesthetic. Without a sound, the delivery guy went down, and they had their way with his jacket, pockets, and shoes. There was no thumb drive, of course. All three stood up and took off sunglasses. Their eyes didn't seem to have any pupils in the darkness. Kaido was reminded of insects. They were still clearly Japanese, but pale and saturated in some unknown evil. And grins. Grins that were pasted on the face of each but had no mirth. The grin of a tiger. Kaido thought he saw a violet color swim into their eyes briefly, but then it was gone. A drug of some variety. One of them knelt down and did something to the head of the delivery driver. The kid's body shook, then returned to motionlessness. "He's not going to remember the last year," quipped another of the three. "You ought to thank us," said the third. They looked at the kid and laughed a moment more, then as one made their exit. Kaido leaned back in shadows by his little car as they piled in their gray sedan and pulled away. He caught the license plate this time, making a mental note before jumping back into his own vehicle and following after. He wrote the number of the license plate down in his notepad at the first traffic light where he could stop. The gray sedan went back to a neighborhood adjacent his apartment building and parked. One man stayed with the car and the other two got out, walking briskly to wherever they would post up to wait for him. Kaido was patient. He didn't make a move until they were long gone, then just about scared the pale off the black-eyed baldy in the sedan. He splintered the driver's side window with the barrel of a handgun and yanked on the door's handle, pleasantly surprised to find it unlocked. What an oversight! Kaido yanked open the door and grabbed the man under his arm with his free hand, all but throwing him out of the car. He wore an earpiece. Kaido ripped it out and stomped it, backing out of reach and training the gun on the man's floppy fishing hat over his black sunglasses. He said, "What kind of a Yakuza are you? What kind of cop are you?" "Retired. Who are you and why are you following me?" "I'm Jiro, and I'm not following you." "Who are you, cop?" "You know I'm not a cop, and you know you're following me, and I can tell you're not a cop either, so that leaves only the mob." "Which family?" "All of them and none of them." "All right, hands on your head, get down on the sidewalk, face first, put your hand behind your back." "Who's Blue Fury?" Kaido blinked, then remembered he made up a code name for the fake person he was meeting, the poor unsuspecting delivery guy. Now Kaido smiled. "Nobody you need to concern yourself with." "Who is the man?" "What man?" "The man you were going to tell Blue Fury about, of course." And Baldy started to chuckle in an unsettling way. "Why don't you take off your sunglasses?" "You don't want me to do that." "Why? Do you look like a beetle under there?" The pale man's eyebrows spasmed in an angry expression, and before Kaido could say anything else, he felt a tingle at the back of his neck, then ducked as fast as he could. His instincts were good, but not enough. The two who left before, walking up the street, were somehow right behind him. They came at him from behind with their anesthetic hood. They were off balance when Kaido ducked, but ready for him to strike. He felt a knee kiss his chin with pain and stars, but he wasn't done and let his limbs become melee weapons, feeling crunchy contact and hearing a few yelled expletives. He wasn't quite fast enough, though. They managed to get him under the arms, and now the grinning pale one, who called himself Jiro, had his own weapon in Kaido's face. Jiro said, "Who's the guy, Kaido?" "You know as much as I do." A gut punch. "Who is he, Kaido?" "I have no idea." "You know something." Abruptly, the little man in the droopy fishing hat and black outfit became a rag doll flying backward through the air. Something invisible impacted his chest, and his arms shot forward, limp as he tumbled away in the night. The men holding Kaido looked back, and the same happened to them. The man to his left had some invisible force snatch his legs, and he went end over end until he landed in a heap on the pavement. The other one took an impact to the head and went down hard. Kaido turned slowly to see a swarthy man with a goatee and a Hawaiian shirt walking from an alley in sneakers, holding a gun like Kaido had never seen. He yelled something in English. Kaido sighed, hands in the air, unsure of what was going on. "I only speak a more English. I say, one see you, they all see you," came the reply in cautious Japanese. "I only speak little Japan. Better in English, you, with me." Kaido gave his English another shot. "What? Who you?" "I stop the bad guys. Come, look, gun down." He lowered the uncommon firearm. Kaido felt his arms fall as well. The little swarthy man said, "Don't run, hold on." And he put his finger to his ear. After a moment he said this in English. "Yes? Work with Kyun. He's good with cats. He can keep to... Oh, look, I just got here. Pray about it, Jin. I'll be back." And he hung up. Turning to Kaido, he resumed Japanese. "Business. Koreans. It's crazy on the border. I don't have a lot of time. Very short window." "I understand. You have seen things." "Who hasn't?" "Well, but you have seen rare things." "I am not sure what you mean." "Sure you are, Kaido." The man in the Hawaiian shirt walked up to him. The closer he got, the more he looked Indian. "I'm Ricky." And he held out his hand. Kaido was about to shake it when both men heard a moaning sound. Ricky turned fast and fired a shot in each of the bald men. The firearm made a muted mechanical noise, but had no muzzle flash. "Don't worry. Sound gun. I keep it low. It'll scramble you a little while. Yes. I really rang their bell though. Again though, they are fine. Come with me, Kaido. I know a safe place. Their brothers will be arriving soon. And I don't have long to be showing you something." Ricky turned around. Kaido didn't hesitate. One way or another, this was a lead. "Oh!" Ricky stopped. "Get rid of your phone." "It's under the Winnebago." "Winnebago?" Kaido blinked, thinking of the English word. Garbanzo," he said. "Gazebo. Gazebo. Under bamboo stairs. I do wish the water worked here. Okay, follow me." "The water won't work?" But Ricky didn't respond. He jogged around the corner of an alley to another sedan that could have been the carbon copy of that driven by the Pale Men. They hit the road fast and disappeared into the night. Above the street, where Ricky and Kaido were, several floors high in an office building, a Japanese man sat on a windowsill, peeking through the blinds subtly. He wore the darkest of sunglasses, despite the night. He put a finger to his ear. "The enemy has taken bait." Ricky didn't slow down for several miles, going in and out of various intersections, sometimes totally changing direction. Soon they came to a wide parking garage. Ricky parked in a reserved spot and hung something around the rearview mirror, then turned to Kaido. "Come on." He hopped out of the sedan and led Kaido down nearby stairs to a service exit. Behind the cement flight of stairs that zigzagged under the garage was a wooden pallet leaned against the wall. When Ricky grabbed it, the whole concrete facade under the stairs came with, obviously some less dense material. There was a corridor yawning behind. "After you," said Ricky. Kaido went, Ricky followed, double-checking that none saw them and pulling the hidden door shut, locking it. After a moment listening in absolute stillness, Ricky straightened up and resumed his place ahead of Kaido, saying over his shoulder, "Mr. Kaido, are you spiritual?" "I can be spirited." Ricky grumbled. "This way." And he indicated a left turn at an intersection in the corridor. These halls were very skinny. Kaido got the impression whoever built them found spaces between connected infrastructure and broke through cement walls to make a path. Eventually, they came to an open area surrounded in concrete with a cement cube in the center that had no windows. It was the size of a large shipping crate, maybe. Ricky opened a hinged concrete door in the central cube. It gave on a small data center filled with servers on one end and monitors on the other. Ricky said, "You must excuse me little. I trained in government. I know IT, but not enough. Easton helped me put together for our special operation in Japan this array, but that's neither here nor there. It's an ongoing thing. It's going to be totally different animal. Anyway, Easton, he really knows his stuff. You don't know him. I don't know my stuff, actually. That's why you notice me on your smartphone with the mirroring app. I thought that was... Oh, they were following you too. Probably a few more spooks of one kind or the other have an eye on you as well, and we don't even know about it. You are a hot item, Mr. Kaido. Anyway, it'll take a second to find what I want on the computer, is what I mean to say. Close the door." Kaido did. There were several office chairs behind the desk with its wrapping monitors. Ricky was burning through access windows, filling in usernames and passwords. Kaido sat beside him, eyes increasingly wide. "Who are you?" "Calm." Kaido blinked. I apologize. I thought my no acronym. Calm. Acronym. In English, Codified Anthropological Logistics Management. CALM. We are international. Calm. By contrast, AIC is not. AIC. American Cohabitation Enforcement. Those guys, like your baldies under the fishing hats here in Japan. The ones in this country are not American, of course. They're the Japanese version. But it's the same guys, basically. Like one mafia in one country, one mafia in another. But they're all thugs. Like that. In the USA, they are AIC. Sometimes these groups are central to a country. Sometimes to a region. I've heard the name Kuro Daragon, but I'm not sure. "Black Dragon," said Kaido. "Yeah. How do you know they're same? Kuro Doragon sound very different from Ache. One sounds government. One sounds thugs. There are dozens of them worldwide. All countries have at least one, sometimes more, working together. That's the USA shape of Ache. Half a dozen floating demon bosses run the three-letter agencies. The rest play monopoly with corporations. I helped some of those bastards get the hell out 6 years ago. They are putting their hooks in again since, but we knocked them good, yes, yes. Do you remember the Devil's Tower incident?" "What is the Devil's Tower?" Ricky chuckled. "And the big rock in America. A bunch of people are appearing on top of it 6 years ago, and from nowhere." "Never heard about this." Ricky nodded. "Well, they do that. The world, it's big, Kaido. Big, lots of things always going on. Distractions, very, very easy. Cover-ups, no trouble." Kaido turned to Ricky, feeling his inner detective regain ground. "Why do you need me?" "We're looking for the same guy you are, for the same reason, and you've actually encountered him. His daughter, she just, like, within the last several hours, did something that is a big problem, and we need to get ahead of it. I might have to go into North Korea myself, and I don't like the scenarios we have for that sort of operation." You are talking about Himari?" "Yes," Ricky nodded. "You've been on our radar before she did anything. You've been on our radar since she showed up again. But things changed. Okay, I almost found it. Here, look at this." The footage was grainy. It was the camera of a casino. Caesar's Palace, in fact. Kaido felt himself go cold. "Las Vegas?" "Yes," Ricky nodded. Then did something with the camera on it so it zoomed into a particular table in the high roller room. Kaido saw himself, sandwiched between two Russians and an old woman in a dress. He had a gold pen in one pocket, so shiny the camera caught it glinting. Instinctively, he felt for the pen about his person, finding it in his front right pant pocket. Who knew how it migrated there? He withdrew it, looked at it, and felt his stomach tighten further. He never remembered how or where he got the pen. It was his one stylish indulgence. One day he just found it about his apartment, and he liked it. Seeing himself in the footage with the pen, Ricky pointed above the table in the middle of the screen. "Watch," he said. There was a flash, and a bunch of colored foam came out of a circular hole that swam from the air. A tiny cat flew in. A man with a mustache followed, and Kaido saw himself look absolutely astonished at the table. The cat, well, it was a kitten really, puked on the cards of one of the Russians and ran. The swirling oval of suds irised close, and there was a faint shockwave that warbled the surveillance camera. The mustachioed man covered in suds followed the cat, fired shots in the air, and caused a panic. "And that's my old boss, Clever Ed," Ricky observed. "Clever Ed," Kaido repeated in English. "Great guy, actually. This happened during one of our extracurricular, I guess it was an op. I'm supposing you might say. Something happened in the other place. He had to drop out owing to the wrong exit. He had to go through the wrong exit, basically, with his cat. And thus is happening the interruption of your poker game. No. I'll tell you more in a minute. What? There. Look, you ducked under the table, but this guy." The Russian sitting to Kaido's left grabbed an armful of poker chips and disappeared from the view of the camera. You had to watch it. He was quick, very quick, lost in the chaos. The other Russian, the wide, fat one, stood up and started yelling. Half a dozen people slithered out of the maelstrom around him, and he started sending them back into the agitated crowd, which by now dwindled considerably as the panicked gamblers vamoosed. Ricky stopped the feed. "This guy who grabbed the chip, this is your guy." "Run it back," Kaido said forcefully, and opened his wallet. He had the picture Yami gave him. "Can you zoom?" "Sure." Ricky zoomed in, and Kaido held the image of the man with the balalaika next to the man that was sitting beside him in the casino, then stood back. "Okay, they're same. I knew this man. And I knew you saw my old boss portal in." Kaido blinked. "I have no memories of, but I remember. I had a pair of 2s and a pair of 5s. I went there 3 weeks. I had not vacationed for years." Kaido turned from the screen and felt himself falling back into one of the chairs, head throbbing. "Yeah, they wiped you," Ricky noted. "What?" "When you come back, you got wiped. It's brain damage, but they know how to do it well enough to get away with it. What you need to be hoping is they didn't leave something behind, something behind like a post-hypnotic suggestion hiding and crouching in the back of your subconscious. I know they do it in Japan and in both of the Koreas and China and most of South America. It's a resource thing. They must do this thing. India's 50-50. North America and Russia, 50-50. Depends on who gets you. But in the East, they are wiping like mad out here." "What are you talking about?" "Oh, they did it tonight with the delivery guy. When they put the hood on him, yes, I was watching the whole time. Don't worry about me, worry about them. What they do, it's a chemical or a drug that wipes short-term memory. Sometimes only for a day or so, sometimes for a great while. What is it? Scopolamine, that's it. They wipe hard. 3 weeks. You have a chunk missing out of your brain, Mr. Kaido." Kaido found himself shaking. How am I remembering? The brain makes memories when it is remembering. Think cloud computing, information spread all over the place. Each brain cell, it is being like a server. The way the drug works, cholinergic, that's it. The drug causes a blockage that prevents memory formation and recollection. But the mind is a funny thing. It's like you are always making new memory muscle. The memory in the brain, this is hard, I don't have the words. You know, like a 3D picture. Hologram, Kaido said. Yes, this is memory. You kill part of it, but it's all there. Stored, like decentralized is the word. When the memory is jogged, there it is again for you to recall. Kaido squinted. I have a headache. This will happen, headaches. Whole groups of people have headaches, but you don't hear about when they went through on the news, do you? Go online, no records. We have this casino footage because of Ethan off in one of his remote tech pics where he is liking to nest. Things go on in back rooms, Mr. Kaido. It goes deeper than most could say, and you are in it now. So I've seen things. Why do you need me? Himari Fujimoto's father, this man I showed you, this picture. We have no idea who he actually is. We see him there, but who is he? We know his look, but, well, he's supposed to be dead, according to Yame. He's not, Ricky noted. True. He may be the only way to find her. Nobody knows why, but recently, Himari gave something to the North Koreans that has the whole of the spirit world upside down. They are in an uproar. They are chasing down every lead they can, even you. But you are a very good lead, given your proximity to her disappearance. When you went to Yame, you showed up on their radar, and mine. Do you really think Himari's father can help in this situation? Green Kolya does, for some reason, Ricky replied and pointed to the wide-faced man on the screen. Green Kolya. Russian mobster, at the table with you that day. Starting to remember. Must have been it must have been a divine appointment all around, I will be wagering. Think hard. Can you picture it? Vaguely. What a vacation I have forgot. Forgive me. My head. Either Green Kolya will get to Himari's father first, or we will. Here's the thing, Mr. Kaido. You are locked in. I had to save you. I couldn't allow them to have you. But all this you see here, clandestine, you follow? It's a secret. You, for me, are a lead. I could not let them get you, but you have said you are not spiritual. I cannot then trust you immediately, even if I'd like. So, like it or not, Mr. Kaido, you are with us for the very near future. Let's find Himari, Kaido said, and rendered a brief bow. Ricky nodded, stood, and bowed similarly. This was his mistake. Kaido couldn't see it, but for the briefest of instants, his own eyes went black as pitch. Very quickly, he snatched the unconventional sonic gun from Ricky's holster. It was a wide holster, and Ricky hadn't clipped the gun back in. There was a split second where Kaido held it on him. Ricky said, "Wait!" Kaido blew him into the stack of servers. Sorry, he said. Sorry. I work alone. You said it's not lethal. So sorry. And he ran out the way they came in. Ricky was disoriented 10 minutes, then managed to disentangle himself from the servers. He immediately ran out into the wider concrete room, dizzy though he was. No Kaido. He let loose a string of Punjabi expletives, stopped himself, appeared to apologize to the ceiling, then ran to a corner of the room where there was a pet carrier, inside of which was long-haired night black Papadom. Papadom, we have to move, Ricky said. He pulled a sheet of paper with some scrawled notes out of a pocket, looked at it a few seconds, looked around the room, then positioned the cat carrier facing a precise segment of wall and dropped a bit of dried meat through the grate. Papadom ate, purred, and opened a portal. Ricky picked up the carrier with the cat. Before he continued, he put a finger to his ear. Anybody home? Yeah, no. No joy on Kaido. I'm coming in. Ihime Prefecture compromised. Yes, that is true. If we can get to the Babel object back to its keeper first. Okay, no, I agree. We can't leave it behind now. Ricky put down the carrier, ran back to the cement cube in the middle of the room, and pulled a cable like a basement light. A timer started on the computer screens. 3 minutes. Ricky ran back to the portal, picked up the carrier with Papadom, and stepped through. The portal closed behind almost 3 minutes later, only seconds in the realm of the Liminal Era. In the concrete chamber, the timer reached 0, and the cement cube in the middle of the room imploded with a low thud, revealing a drainage array of rushing water below that took away all equipment previously in the little compartment and gradually filled the wider chamber until water seeped out the hidden exit under the stairs. The entire area was requisitioned from plumbing infrastructure of the city. What Ricky activated simply restored the natural functionality of that infrastructure. The only remaining evidence anyone ever did anything else inside such infrastructure was the hidden door of its entry. When the maintenance guys came, they wouldn't find much.